running, we'll just skip.
All right. There we go. Yes, it is interesting how this thing it is a little fickle, right? If you aren't the person that originated the environment, it does not allow you to go through and interact with those polls and stuff. So hopefully we can get that figured out. It should be pretty easy to do. But yeah, that's always a fun one. So welcome everybody. I'm just going to give everybody a little bit more time to go through and get themselves logged in. I love seeing those participant numbers continue to rise, and feel free to go through and throw in a chat so we can have a little shout out amongst ourselves. Love seeing where everybody's at and who's joining us today. We've had quite a turnout. Stephen, I know I told you earlier, but I mean, we were getting shouts out from Nevada and Florida and Maine, and it's been a great conference. Oh, there we go. Brevard County in Florida. We're going to come. Got some Mississippi folks in here today. There's a Lee County in Florida too. Washington County, Tennessee, Denver. I love it. Here we go. Oh, Camp Smurfy, Dan Miller. Dan and I actually used to work together at Esri way back when. Ohio, excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, I think we're getting pretty darn close. We've broken the 50 mark, and of course, you know, Stephen, a lot of times we'll have a lot more people kind of joining as we get through these sessions. People need time to run out, and they've got to go grab their cup of coffee. This is my Wyoming mug. I've got one just like it from the Guinness Storehouse in Ireland. Exactly the same mug, practically. But anyways, I'll go ahead and start us off, and then I'm going to hand it off to you. I'll go back into quiet mode here and just kind of keep monitoring things as far as questions and so forth for you. Okay.
Thank you, John.
You betcha. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. This is our last session of the day, and I know that we're excited to have so many of you guys here to join us. We are going to be covering a session today, which is called Overcoming the Common Operation Picture Challenge. My name is John Joseph. I'll be your moderator for today's session for the DataMark team. Before we get started, I'd like to make sure everybody knows that we are recording these sessions for the webinars and all of the folks that are participating in the virtual conference. This will require that we have to put you guys on mute in order to kind of guarantee the quality assurance of the video content that's going to come out later. So, you know, if you got questions or you have things you want to go through and cover with us, if you look at the center of your lower portion of your screen, if you just scroll your little mouse over there, you'll see that there's a Q&A box. And then that Q&A box, you can go through and submit questions. I'll try and interject those for us throughout the session if I can, or hold them till the end if necessary. So that way we can get Stephen to go through and answer some additional questions if we have any during his presentation. I'd like to also make sure that I thank everybody, all our sponsors that we've had today. Critical Response Group got an opportunity to go through and do a presentation earlier today. We also had the folks from Comtech, of course, who are here with us now, and Motivations, who helped set up our keynote sponsor that we had this afternoon. So without their involvement as our sponsors, we wouldn't be able to put on events like this. And really our goal around this is really to provide education and advocacy for our user community that's out there. So we do appreciate all of the support they give us. For today's presentation, I am joined by my good friend, Stephen Craig from Comtech. Stephen is with the Comtech team, and they have built some incredible tools with their Smart Response product. And I had to, had the opportunity to kind of go through and see this several times over the last couple of years. And it's been fantastic to kind of see it evolve and grow as a common operating picture. So like I said, I'm going to probably hand this off to Stephen, but I think the one thing I'd like to say about common operating pictures that everybody should kind of appreciate, especially coming from the public safety industry. And a good friend of mine once told me this. He said that the real power behind GIS is it's an ability to share and disseminate information. It's one map and it's one fight, and that's what a common operating picture is all about. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Stephen and let you go ahead and do your presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, John. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen Craig. As John advised, I'm the Director for Business Development and Public Safety for Comtech Trusted Locations, a division of Comtech. And I guess I'll start out with a little bit of background on myself. I've been involved with public safety since 1985. I started as a 911 coordinator for one of the major telephone companies. I did that for about 10 years and then switched over to the vendor. Well, even though the telephone companies are vendors per se, I switched over to one of the major manufacturers of the 911 call handling equipment. And I did that for just over 22 years. And I've been working for Comtech now for some time in various roles. And now I've moved over into the Director of Business Development. From a public safety perspective, I've actually been involved in public safety as a volunteer for 21 years in my county here in North Georgia, as a search and rescue team member, also a former member of the North Georgia Mounted Search and Rescue Team, and a former certified rescue diver. I'm not able to enjoy those volunteer activities anymore due to the travel required for the job, but it is something that I very much enjoy as a part of my life from the public safety perspective. I'd also like to say that we're really proud of our partnership with Datamart. Since they're a premier GIS creation and maintenance shop, it fits in very well with what Comtech does. And since we provide the tools that sit on the front end that allow the clients and the customers that we have to take multiple interfaces and bring them into a single user interface for more immediate actionable data. And with that, I'm going to mute my video or stop my video so that we can concentrate on the presentation. So let's talk about the common operating picture. Common operating picture, or commonly referred to as COP, obviously, is continuous. It's a continuously updated overview of an incident. You compile it through the incident's life cycle, and it requires data sharing, not only between integrated communication and information management, but also the intelligence that goes along with that. So the overall goal of a common operating procedure is real-time situational awareness at all levels of the incident management, not just at the ECC PSAP with the telecommunicators, but also with the first responders that are in the field. So we've got a little diagram here that is just a brief overview of how the common operating picture, which of course is depicted here in the middle, starts out. So you've got, obviously you have the communication to the PSAP, which could be a call or a text session, and in the future, it could be some type of social media connection, but you have a request for service, is what I like to call it, of public safety. And that, of course, can also entail, at least in today's world, the availability of technology, whether that would be any kind of mobile phone data via various agencies like RAVE and or Rapid SOS, telematics, cameras such as DOTs, and even some closed circuit cameras, as long as they're on an IP network, which comes in with the real-time data of the actual caller from the various resources. That gets fed into typically a map, as well as, of course, the CAD. And then from those pieces of information, it's incumbent upon the telecommunicator to figure out the situational awareness that then allows them to make an informed decision on not only what resources they need to dispatch for the response for this incident, but also to relay all that awareness information to the units in the field. John, would you or Carolyn like to put up that first polling question? So we have a polling question here. And if those of you that are on the call would like to answer that, it would be some interesting information that we would like to sort through with Datamart at a later time.
So normally I would be able to tell you how many folks have gone through and had already gone through and signed off or been able to vote. but unfortunately, as a host and a panelist, we don't get to vote.
That's okay. All righty. So moving on with the presentation in the interest of time, a common operating picture is very paramount to the provision of any information that can improve the management of a scenario, as well as provide the data necessary to the resources that are in the field so that they can pivot at a moment's notice. Because we all know that the incident that's called in and what they're dispatching to oftentimes can turn into sometimes it can be different from what was called in, but oftentimes it can morph into something that's even bigger than what was called in. So the common operating picture allows that information to be shared across the agencies as well as from dispatch, that provides the true situational awareness in the field that they need to properly respond. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about FEMA's National Incident Management System, NIMS. And the reason I bring this up is it's an excellent resource for those that either A, have not actually started the creation of a common operating picture within their center, or B, they have started one, but are curious to delineate how it matches up against FEMA's guidelines. And those are posted, as I said, on FEMA's website under NIMS. There also have some information about the National Response Framework that can then suggest how an agency can respond for large-scale incidents, cross-jurisdictional incidents, regional-wide incidents. And that information is also very helpful for those hopefully rare occasions when your agency runs into a multi-jurisdictional or regional incident. Obviously, scenarios like that would be major weather incidents like Texas experienced recently, fires, hazmats, those things can typically grow cross-jurisdictional. So with the use of a common operating picture, you can incorporate advanced technologies, mapping tools, of course, sensors. And when we say sensors, we're referring to anything that's IoT, the Internet of Things, telematics, video feeds, which we mentioned earlier. All of these can improve the response by enhancing not only what the telecommunicator sees, but the information that they're going to share across the tools that the first responders also have in the field. So John, if you'd like to put the next polling question up.
We sure can. In fact, I was going to ask you, Stephen, would you like to see what the results were from the first polling question, just to kind of give you a sense of the audience?
Sure, that'd be great.
So
let me finish with this poll first, and then we can pull up those results of question 1, and then we'll come back to this one.
Perfect.
But right now we've had about 16 people participate, up to 20. Give it a few more seconds, and then I'll end it, and we can go over the results.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, the good news is while we're waiting and people are having an opportunity to look at those, we had an excellent presentation earlier today that was provided by CRG. And thank you, I've seen those. One of the things that I found very compelling about Mike's story is the approach that they're taking on the grid and how they approach mapping the interior of the building. That is all obviously important data, very keen data for those who might be responding to any incident and need details about how to get to that specific person in a building. So that feeds into, as they said at CRG, a common operating picture that again provides situational awareness. That's the type of data, one piece of data that is very important to being able to provide true situational awareness. So let's talk about what is it and why do you need it a little bit further. So it provides emergency operations the capability, excuse me, there we go. I had a screen burp here, to improve the management of any scenario that they're currently working on. Let's see, my screen's not for it. My apologies. Here we go. Let's finish up on that one. Incorporating the tools. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. moving on next, I thought it would be a good idea to show you what I'm talking about. This is just an example of a map alley screen. Nothing different than most of you've probably already seen in your systems today. You'll notice that, of course, it's got the call, the carrier location, the rapid SOS location, and various data points on the map, as well as a satellite overview. And of course, the integration with rapid SOS to show you where the carrier and the rapid SOS location actually are, and the difference in the two, which that right there is about 150 feet. You notice on the left-hand column of the screen, there's also the ability to have additional information over there on the 1/3 bottom left of the screen, which of course could be Uber, Sirius XM, past residents, criminal history. And that's just a few of the 3 or 4 of the pieces of information that can be provided in any situational awareness, or should be provided in any situational awareness mapping solution. Taking it one step further allows the user, by selecting various layers on the map, to have additional information process and populate. So this is the same call, but now with getting ready to look for a cross street on the call, and also showing that there's DOT cameras that are available. And behind this number 2, behind the call, there's 2 cameras. That's what that means. You just need to zoom in, which this is not a live map feed. It's a screen scrape. The telecommunicator would be able to zoom in and have access to a DOT camera that might be able to show real time what's going on at that location. So as you can see from the first screen to the second screen, we're progressing a little bit further down into a true situational awareness map that will allow the telecommunicator to select, by toggling on and off, the various layers of information that might be pertinent to them in helping to determine what responders need to go, as well as what information needs to be relayed to them throughout the life of the incident. Taking it one step further, this is just simply taking that same call and now turning on live traffic feeds, which will give the telecommunicator the ability to see not only which unit might be the closest, but not physically the closest, but closest based off of traffic. So they can turn this layer on, and then by using another layer that could be turned on, which we're not going to go through all the layers that can be turned on in a situational awareness common operating procedure solution, you would be able to have as many of these layers on as is necessary based off the incident at hand, or limit it to as clean as you want the screen to be. But again, information on demand is the key, and the buttons are there. And that's what we see people try to strive for when they're trying to create a true common operating picture, not only on the background and paper, but what does it look like when they put that in front of their telecommunicators. And if you'd like to put up the next polling question, please.
This is a great question, Stephen. I mean, this is such a common problem for folks that they do have more than one map, sometimes many maps that they're in the center. And excellent question.
Well, thank you. And the reason I asked it is a lot of agencies do have multiple maps. They'll have a mapped alley screen on their call handling equipment. They'll have CAD map, and those are the two primary maps that they'll use for dispatch. But oftentimes, in my years in going to centers, I will see they'll have a Doppler weather screen either at the position or on a big screen in the PSAP, so that everybody can see what's happening from a weather perspective. And sometimes they'll have yet another screen that they're logged into their state or their city's DOT cameras. And that's all great information to have, but at the same time, it requires the telecommunicator to have to look across all of those screens and then correlate that information themselves into something that's actionable. It's our belief at Comtech that all of that information should be available to the telecommunicator in a single interface. So the backend sources of that data can still be the same, but funneling them all into a single map interface that allows the telecommunicator to toggle on and off what he or she needs as they're managing the incident, we feel is a great advantage that provides actionable data that's sitting right in front of them, as opposed to them having to scan across other screens. And then finally, one more graphic I'd like to show you here. What I did here is, instead of having all of these layers turned on at one time on a single screen, I showed them in 3 individual screen formats. We have a statewide network with our NGCS SST department through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So that's why you're seeing this with Massachusetts, because we currently have customers that are using our particular product in the state of Massachusetts. And what they had was a common goal of eliminating multiple screens and putting them all into one single user interface, again, as you've seen, with layers that can be toggled on and off. So this first picture over here on the left is actually a screen that shows all incidents in your jurisdiction. Well, in the case of Massachusetts, we're showing this statewide because this is an equivalent to the EOC, which the EOC for the state would obviously have jurisdiction statewide. If we were talking about just a specific county or a city within the state, then their jurisdictional boundaries would likely stop at their county or municipality lines. But we also like to be able, and so we wouldn't be showing them the calls from the other agency, but we like to show them the map that's surrounding them, because oftentimes incidents, especially when you're in a felony chase or any other kind of moving, can go from one jurisdiction to the next. And you certainly wouldn't want your map to stop at your jurisdiction when you have first responders that are going beyond your jurisdiction into another, and therefore you don't see that on the map. So we prefer to provide the map not only in your jurisdiction, which may have greater detail than the neighboring jurisdictions, but at least show a trusted open source map that can be shared by the other jurisdictions on the incident. So that's kind of what you're seeing in this first graphic on the left, is all calls that were going on at that single moment in time in the state of Massachusetts. The second screen is more of an analytics that can be pulled up, again, at the toggle of a button. And all of these can be controlled by logon username and password. So what we're looking at right here is a specific moment in time that was chosen. It's a 10-minute moment in time to look at how many calls are going on throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts at one time. So obviously you see 61. You can obviously see that the 61 is based in the Boston metropolitan area. You can actually click on that and zoom down into specific incidents. If you go down to the right-hand corner to the Cape, or Cape Cod, you'll see, there's a circle with 2 incidents. And then as you get over to Barnstable County on the right, where there's 16, which is Falmouth, Massachusetts, they currently have 16 incidents. But once again, this allows them to click on that and zoom in to see not only all of the incidents at one time, but individual incidents. And you might say, well, why is that important? From a command and control perspective, in an EOC or a major incident, obviously this information helps them to determine if other calls that are coming in are in any way, shape, or form related to the call that I might be working on if I'm a TCO, a telecommunicator operator. But it also gives them the ability to see other calls that may be close geographically, but unrelated to the incident. So that's one of the benefits of having a overview jurisdictional view that can show all incidents and then narrow down. And then finally, with the graphic that we're showing over here on the right, we show that we not only have integrated live traffic turned on, but we also have DOT cameras, locations for AEDs, and then the purple lines that you see in there are routing information for police, fire, and medic for the closest responders that could be recommended that are in service to the telecommunicator for dispatch. And as we said earlier, oftentimes the geographic closest responder may not be the fastest based off traffic. And that is all factored in to a good situational awareness solution so that the telecommunicator can instantly see that even though, you know, John might be 5 miles further away from the incident because Steve's only 2 miles away, Steve's got bumper to bumper traffic. So we're going to dispatch John because he could be there in 6 minutes. It might take Steve 15. So there we go. Again, immediate actionable data. That's the key. Some of the important technologies that are impacting public safety today, of course, you know, everybody's familiar with them, but since we're specifically focusing on common operating picture today, the sources of data may differ. And by the way, let me just pause here for a second. I apologize. I meant to mention earlier that I don't just read slides because I think you're all very capable of reading the slides. So you'll notice that I paraphrase on the slides and will edify them to some degree. But if you guys have any questions, if I miss something on a bullet point that I put on a slide, please put it in the questions and answer, because that is not my intent. So again, going back to the sources of the data that differ from one industry to the next, because we've been working in the commercial industry with this type of data for 2 decades now at Comtech. And for the last couple of years, we've been bringing this into the public safety. But it's essentially designed to work the same way, just for different reasons, obviously. But again, developing actionable intelligence in real time gives you the ability to improve organizational decision-making. There are 6 key components to the development of a robust COP. And by the way, these are not components, and this presentation is not something that came just out of Steve Craig's mind or heart. These are things that, again, are recognized by FEMA and NIMS and other major organizations, not only at the federal and state level, of guidelines for PSAPs to follow. And they are just that, they're guidelines. They're not rules or regulations or laws, they're simply guidelines. So let's talk about 6 of the key guidelines. Now, these I'm going to be specific on because it needs to be handled that way. Location. Well, we'll all agree that 911 is similar to real estate in that location is everything. Location, location, location. Without it, you can't provide a proper dispatch. So the positioning technologies that provide the detail on the physical whereabouts of tracking not only humans, but machines, i.e. cars with telematics and other things, is an important consideration for you as part of your common operating picture. Maps, you know, these tools that represent the physical area, both outdoor, but also indoor, as we saw in Mike's presentation earlier on CRG, which we know there's a few agencies that are focusing on indoor mapping, but that's the next step. We seem to be doing a pretty good job in our industry on the public safety mapping side, outdoors, but indoors over the last couple of years is definitely getting legs. And I think it's very important that it continue to, for all the obvious reasons that were mentioned in the earlier presentation. It provides key context and additional information for locations of interest. And an example, things like fire stations, the highlight location of fire hydrants that are near the incidents, AEDs, any type of data that can be posted on the map that allows the telecommunicator to see it immediately, that might be able to help prior to the first responders getting on scene. An example, the AED. So you got an incident in a building You got the caller that's talking about somebody who's had a myocardial infarction or heart attack, and first responder is going to take some time to get there. But if on your map it shows that there's an AED on the second floor and it is available, then you can have somebody else run and get that AED and immediately start walking him through any kind of EMD dispatch that might be able to stabilize this person prior to the paramedics or the EMTs responding. The other 4 points of the 6 common operating recommendations by FEMA is machine data. Now, these are devices that are simply nothing more than cameras, sensors, telematics. It can be IoT devices that transmit data that provide additional insights. We have public data, and those can be persons of interest. It can be social media content, public health records, public safety officials that target specific needs of citizens. That is actually data that is available and can be pulled into a situational awareness map. Obviously, the GIS data management part. Well, we partnered with Datamark for that because they're specialists in the GIS and in the creation of GIS data and the management of it. And we provide the front end tool that displays their data. So we are very happy to be partnered with them. And I think they're happy to be partnered with us because we were able to take their information and display it in a very easy to use single map interface, and then provide a link on that interface for clients that already do business with Datamark to go straight from the map and go into Datamark's what they call VEP platform. So if they have any incident or any map information that doesn't seem to be clear or accurate, then they'll be able to go, if they're a Datamark client, they'll be able to go straight from our interface to the Datamark VEP cloud, because we're cloud-based as well. And they'll be able to input that data immediately. And then finally, we talk about analytics. And of course, analytics is nothing more than the process of cleansing and thrashing out and pulling the data to transform it into something that provides near real-time or real-time history that can actually help on the human intelligence side for a major incident, sometimes minor incidents, but typically these are medium to major type incidents on a real-time basis. If there's any questions so far, please feel free to post them on the Q&A side.
Absolutely. Actually, we did get a question, Stephen, in the chat. It didn't go into the Q&A section, but the question is basically this, and it was for populating total calls the way that you described it there and how you showed it in that one slide. Do all the PSAPs have to have a Comtech map, or is it that the 911 providers are somehow or another sharing and that information is being gathered and then represented in the map?
For us to go cross-jurisdictional, which of course in Massachusetts we can, it would have to be Comtech's map. There's no, other than the EIDO and the EIDD interfaces that Nina's recommended and those protocols, there's not a data lake that at least I'm familiar with today in the United States that would allow us all to push our data in various formats and protocols into the data lake. And then out of the data lake, the output would transpose those into varying types of protocols. As an example, you've got CAD A, who's a specific type of CAD, and you've got CAD B, who's a specific type of CAD, as well as 911 call handling equipment that could be 2 different types. And without a common interface or a protocol converter, there's really no way to do that. The way that we do it is we're agnostic to the data files, the geospatial data files that we handle. We can handle Esri, we can handle JSON files, TOSM, OSM maps, KZM. There's really a plethora of different data files that we can handle, as opposed to just simply an Esri file, which of course we can handle an Esri file as well. Mm-hmm. And it's not uncommon to run into jurisdictions, which we have already seen that in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where you've got an Esri shop, and then within that county, you've got a city who is using something totally different from Esri, but they still need both of those files to display on one map without it having to be converted into an Esri file. But the answer to your question is yes. If you want to show cross-jurisdictional, then the neighboring jurisdiction, we can show you the map, but we can't show you what's going on over there without two things: A, them having our solution, and then B, the permissions established between the two jurisdictions for sharing of said data. Did that answer your question?
Yep, I think that did. I think that did. And I would contribute this too. And again, you know, not trying to pat you too much on the back there, Stephen, but I know that Comtech, Massachusetts, not the only place in the world where Comtech has established, you know, next generation core service deployments as a company. And so I can envision this being something that would be, you know, very likely to be passed around to anybody that's probably an existing Comtech customer for next generation core services, to potentially use this as that common operating picture tool to be shared and distributed amongst all of those users.
That's correct. Thank you, John. And just had a question on the Q&A. I'm not sure if everybody else saw it. I answered it via a text back, but let me go ahead and answer it for everybody, for the benefit of everybody as well. I'm not sure if you can see that. The question was, can we show the outages that might be taking place either overall or in specific areas? We have our NGCS, Next Generation Core Services, deployed throughout many states. I was just using the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as one of the examples. And the answer to the question is yes, we can. And the reason why is if we're providing, first off, let me clarify, if we're providing, Comtech is providing the Next Generation Core Services, the simple answer is yes. We can get that data because it's our company, and we can turn around and provide that on the map as a message or various ways to provide that. You know, if we were looking at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you know, the left regional section, whatever district that might be called, is currently down, the network's down. If it's not our Next Generation Core Services network, then we would need whoever's it is to be able to provide us the protocol to source that data from them. So for us, it's a yes. For anybody else's NGCS network, it's a maybe, depending on if they're able to share us the data through an API. Good question, though.
Okay. So, Steve, I have another question, and again, this is probably you know, a little bit off the script here a little bit for you, but I definitely want to kind of bring this to bear. You are not limited to interfacing with any particular call handling system or CAD vendor, correct?
That is correct. We are agnostic to the call handling equipment or the CAD vendor. Now, when I say that, as far as the communication path using nationally recognized standards. Now, when we get into EIDO, or you know, if they're using embedded incident data object, or EIDO as we know it from NINA, then obviously we're compliant with that and we can take it within that protocol. If they're not, we have a couple of instances where we're working with current clients that can't, their platform can't do that yet, their CAD or their 911 platform. So we're working at an API level integration. We publish our API, we share it, and with anybody who wants to write to us and is willing to, we will do the same. So that is a yes to your question, John.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, well, moving along, let's talk about how the common operating picture feeds into true situational awareness. So you really can't have situational awareness. Well, I guess you can have a limited amount of situational awareness, but not true situational awareness without having a common operating picture at least defined within your agency. So all the personnel from all the organizations that would be within your municipality or your jurisdiction should all be part of the common operating picture. Obviously, they'll have their own little nuances for police, fire, and medic, and so on, but within the communication center, it's the hub. Nothing happens typically unless they just see an incident in the field while they're out, but I think everybody will agree that the majority of incidents that first responders are sent to are related by communication to the 911 center first. So it's important that the 911 center have their common operating picture that not only includes what they do at the center, but also includes how police, fire, medic, hazmat, other resources that you would dispatch, take that COP and then build upon it for their own. So the construction of a situational awareness program requires a suite of technologies, not just a single technology. I think we've demonstrated that earlier throughout the presentation. If you want to fully exploit the assets in the field, you need multiple data sources, and literally the more the merrier, that can then be shown all at once or whittled down based off of the incident at hand by the telecommunicator as he or she decides what's important to them. Now, the time between the alert for action and between the moment a citizen dials 911 or communicates with 911 through some of the various like text and social media, which is coming, to the time a first responder's dispatch cannot be treated as a matter of convenience. We all know that seconds count. So the whole idea of this is not to create a program that lengthens the time of response, quite the opposite. A 180 shortens the time of response without information overload. Bottom line, immediately actionable data in an intuitive, easy to use interface. And that's how you ensure the number 6 that FEMA recommends, an efficient response by public safety officials need access to all the relevant information, not only at the PSAP or ECC, but also having that being able to be pushed out to any responders in the field. And then for the ECC, the TCOs, and for the first responders to be able to visualize that data, because human beings are visually attentive first. If they've got the gift of sight, it's the graphics and the visual aids that help them. And Mike did a good job of describing that earlier when at CRG's presentation. He mentioned that, you know, we could have written a 5-page document on how the helicopter lands in, but showing a grid map, which I'm very familiar with from search and rescue, and then just pointing the helicopter there, you can get that done. It's almost like sign language. You know, you get it done much quicker as opposed to having to sort through 5 pages of information and make a decision based off of that. So I felt that that was a very good example. And that is exactly what we're talking about here and what FEMA's talking about here in bullet 6. Seems like we have a question here. Let me see what that is.
I don't think that's really quite the question. I think it's just more of an answer to that earlier request. So
yeah, I see that now.
Yep.
But it doesn't come up that way for me. It just shows question and answer.
Yeah, sure.
So as you can see, situational is important. Location's everything. We discussed that earlier. More detail provides for a better response. Situational and public safety means having full real-time visibility in the physical environment, outdoors and indoors if possible, which is something that the industry and we're all striving to get, which of course will be a living database. And then not only having that information, but connecting and integrating it with both human and device-generated data. Device-generated data might be somebody has a smartphone or a device that they're carrying, and they have a fall, and that device is capable of relaying that data automatically to 911. There's programs that do that. An example that I'm sure everybody on the call that is involved directly in public safety can understand is firemen, and oftentimes police will have that built into their radio, some type of a geosensor, that if they were to fall and be horizontal as opposed to standing up and didn't move for a few seconds, it can provide an alert to the PSAP that you have a fireman or an officer who's potentially down, and show that location on the map via the GPS of those. And I think that's also very important, that data is shared across the board, not just with the command on site, but back at the PSAP too. Any questions? No? Okay. So we talked a little bit about the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and we seem to be having a little bit of a screen overlay here for some reason. Don't know why. It's not on my screen, but I see it on the projected screen. So my apologies for that. My screen's clean, and the screen I see being projected has some data written in over it. So I'll just,
Maybe if you try and go back a slide and then come forward once again, see what happens there.
okay.
Nope, same problem.
Same problem. Well, my screen's clean, so I apologize. I'll just explain it to you. So what the case was with some of the jurisdictions that we're working with in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is they also had, in many instances, 2, some cases 3, and in one case 4 maps that their telecommunicators were trying to work with in an effort to create immediately actionable data. So they came to us and they asked us if there's a way that we can take those various map geo shape files, and in some cases, not even GIS files, PDFs or other data sources, and pull them into one common operating procedure, or what they call situational awareness map. And so we've done that, and we've deployed that in quite a few locations in the Commonwealth of Mass. And then they wanted to provide immediately actionable data, which we've talked about. And they wanted the telecommunicator to have access to multiple layers, which we discussed earlier, and then to be able to have the control over those layers from different sources by a single toggle on or off. So they can make their screen as busy as they want, if they want everything on it, and there might be an incident where they might need that, or they can make it as simple as they want. Probably 50 to 60 to 70% of their calls, a simple to a minor, medium level of layers is more than adequate. Then when you get into what's coming up next month on April 18th, the Boston Marathon, they're probably going to have in a command and control center all the layers turned on that they could possibly have, so they can mitigate any risk for the public safety and for the safety of the public that's there, as well as the runners and the first responders that are volunteering for that. And we accomplished that, as I said earlier, by providing the ability to pull in not only any GIS source, whether it's Esri or Mapbox or OpenStreet, but also various types of other files, be they PDF, JPEG files. To us, we just pull them in from the background and then we display them. So with that, we've come to the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and I'd like to open the floor up for any questions and answers. I've also provided my contact information for you.
No, that's excellent. Stephen, let me ask you one more question, and again, maybe this will give some time for folks to go ahead, and if you have additional questions, just slap those in there into the question and answer box. One of the things that I think people get very confused about, right, is that this is just a regionalized system or statewide system type of a tool. That's not really true, right? You basically are rolling this out to individual PSAPs around the country right now.
That is correct. That is correct. We have opportunities that we're working on throughout the country right now. There's obviously additional data, such as the question that came up earlier about network outages. Right. If we're the NGCS provider, or we're getting the API data from the NGCS provider that we can provide, but it is not limited to just a location or a state that has Comtech's NGCS. This is designed to be a standalone product in anybody's center, and again, with a common goal of bringing everything into a single user interface, so that you've got your multiple maps go away, not the data, but the screens go away, and you have one common screen where the multiple screens worth of data is now depicted and available in a single screen.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure that was clear. That was one of those kind of underlying components. You may start off as a COP, right? As a COP application for your individual agency. That's something you can, a great example might be in a place like California. I think about them all the time. We have these very large counties with multiple agencies within the county, sometimes not even using the same CAD systems, not even using the same handling systems. Yet to have one unified mapping product that could connect all of those folks together, I think is really impressive. And that's one of the things I really love about what you guys are doing on the smart response side of things, is that there are plenty of examples out there across the country where you see that all the time.
I agree, and that was well said, John.
Yep. So I'm not seeing any other questions right now, and I know we're getting to about a minute before the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everybody that's taken part in today's presentations. I know we've had an onslaught of all these different presenters that have been here. Thank you, Stephen, for jumping in and helping us out today.
My pleasure.
I feel like if you've got any additional questions, please reach out to Stephen and the folks there at Comtech and learn more about what they're doing on the common operating picture front. And hopefully we will be seeing you tomorrow. We've got some more great sessions that we're going to have starting up first thing in the morning. So be ready, and we'll see you then. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you, Datamark, for providing the session. Have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you.